Go. Okay, where were we? Momentarily lost a connection there. But we were talking about how by very carefully measuring the transit time of earthquake waves in the crust, we can actually been able to create a sort of ultrasound image of the Earth's crust in cross section, and we can actually see the edge of the Pacific plate getting pushed down into the hotter asthenosphere. And as it gets pushed down, some of that crust actually melts and feeds the formation of volcanoes here. So that's a cross section of the Tonga subduction zone, where we can actually see the edge of one plate getting pushed under another. That's a map of the Aleutians in Alaska. If anybody's ever watched The Deadliest Catch, that fleet operates out of Dutch Harbor, Alaska, which I think it may be here. I could have the wrong island, but I think that's it. Anchorage, Alaska is up here. This is Russia. This thing sticking down is the Kamchatka Peninsula. And what I want you to see is that you have this deep trench, this zone right here, making a very smooth curve. And if you're wondering why it's a curve, it's because the Earth is round. If you were to take a knife and cut into an orange at a shallow angle, that cut would be a curve shape. Same thing here, because what's going on is the Pacific plate is moving that way, and it's sliding under the North American plate to the north. And right where it's going down, we have the Aleutian Trench. And behind it, we have the Aleutian Islands, all of these little islands starting here, running all the way back here, and then forming, I think this is the Katmai Peninsula right there, sticking onto North America. All of these are volcanic. All of these islands are potentially active volcanoes. There are periodic eruptions in the Aleutians. It's rather a rough habitat to make a living in, I'll tell you that much. And they're all the result of the Pacific plate getting pushed under the North American plate. And as it gets pushed down, rocks begin to melt. And some of the melted rock pushes its way up and forms a chain of volcanic islands, an island arc, just behind the trench where one plate sinks under another. So that's a classic example of a subduction zone. Japan is right on a subduction zone, which explains why they have volcanoes. Indonesia is built on Indonesia is mostly a big chain of islands produced by a very large and very active subduction zone. One of the largest volcano eruptions that's ever been observed in 1883, the eruption of Krakatau, where 4/5 of an island blew up, creating a sound that was heard 2,600 miles away and also killed 35,000 people. That was on a subduction zone. You can, by the way, get subduction zones where the volcanoes come up as part of a continent, where the Juan de Fuca plate is sinking under the North American plate. That creates a chain of volcanoes that are not forming separate islands. They're coming up, they're forming on North America. And that includes Mount St. Helens, which erupted in 1980 with spectacular results. That includes Mount Rainier outside Seattle, and Mount Hood outside Portland, and Lassen Peak in California, which erupted last in, I want to say, 1911. There's a whole chain of volcanoes forming the Cascade Range That's what you get when you have a plate subducting and forming an arc of volcanoes on land. Right. At the plate boundaries, we've mentioned plates are either moving towards each other or away from each other. If they're pulling away, we get a mid-oceanic ridge. If they're running into each other, we either get a belt of crumpled rocks making a mountain range, or we get a subduction zone where one plate sinks under the other and we get a trench and a volcanic arc. Transform faults occur when plates slide sideways with respect to each other. And a transform fault will always connect either two spreading zones or two subduction zones, or a spreading zone and a subduction zone. There aren't many places in the world where we can see transform faults on land, and this is one of them. This is the San Andreas Fault, which cuts across Southern California. Now, the San Andreas, of course, is the reason for a number of the big earthquakes that California faces. It's often said California is going to fall into the ocean. This isn't actually true. California is not moving away from North America, but California is being dragged northwards, meaning San Francisco is not going to fall into the sea, but it might end up joining Portland in a few million years, which actually sounds about right. The Pacific Plate is moving to the northwest relative to the North American Plate. And the San Andreas Fault connects spreading zones here in the Gulf of California with spreading zones up here in the North Pacific. And so all of coastal California, from San Francisco to LA, San Diego, and then the Baja California Peninsula down here, that's part of Mexico, all of that is slowly sliding north relative to the rest of North America. Where it's sliding north, where we have this bend in it, the sliding motion is not steady because that bend tends to block it. And as a result, we have these mountain ranges along the San Andreas Fault up here. They're called the transverse ranges, and they tend to wall off Los Angeles from the rest of the world, which is fine by me. And so that's what a transform plate boundary looks like. Okay, I have got to stop there. I don't think I can keep talking. So by the power vested me by the state of Arkansas, I'm going to stop the recording. This ends what you're going to be tested on.